Welcome to revAMPd, the #1 amputee podcast hosted by an amputee and brought to you by Dilatory Orthotics and Prosthetics in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm Brian Mosier, the social media advisor for Dilatory, and I also happen to be a left below knee amputee. Let's get into today's episode. How's it going, everyone? My guest today is an active blade runner, dancer, adventurer, and a fierce global advocate for amputee rights. She's also a survivor of the 2013 Boston Marathon bombing, and she hasn't just risen above her challenges, she has danced above them. Adrianne Haslet. Adrianne, welcome to revAMPd.
Thank you, Brian. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Sure. Thanks for coming on. So while I was preparing to talk with you today, I was looking at your Instagram, and I saw a picture of one of the most adorable creatures I have ever seen. He was sitting in your seat on the plane, I believe, before takeoff. And of course, I'm talking about Fred Astaire. And, normally I might say to someone, well, tell me about your dog. But what I'm really interested to know is, did Fred have a good time with you in Las Vegas?
Great question. It was his inaugural trip to Las Vegas, which we all can remember our first.
Yes.
Or perhaps not. But he had a great time. He loved it. He got to learn all about different leg and prosthetic parts, and it was for a prosthetic convention, as you know, and he had a great time in Vegas. He loved it. It was warm weather. Everywhere we went, there aren't very many service dogs when we were there in Vegas, and so everywhere we went, it was, oh, cute puppy. So he loved it.
Awesome. So you were one of two people at AOPA 100 in Las Vegas to be honored with the Snell Legislative Advocacy Award. What does this recognition mean for you?
Well, thank you. I shared that with Aaron with Wiggle Your Toes, and he's a fierce advocate as well, and he means the world to me. This award means so much to me because of the work that so many, including you and so many, do, and Aaron, for trying to pull people together, be social media, be in your prosthetics office while you're in the waiting room, or any of it, just pulling people together and creating a community of people that believe that amputee rights are human rights. It's a human right to be able to have access to care for your eyes so that you can see out of them, so you can get out of bed, and if you have children, to be able to dress your children and get them to school. It's equally a human right to be able to stand and look your loved one in the eye and walk your child to school. And I don't see those two things as any different. So this award means that more people hopefully are, and I believe are, becoming more aware of amputee rights. The more that we talk about it, the more that we have, meetings like this and discussions, I just think it brings it to light. It's very important.
Absolutely.
I'm honored and humbled.
Good. Awesome. So this past May, I attended my very first AOPA policy forum in Washington, D.C. Sitting in those congressional offices and telling my own limb loss story to members of Congress was by far one of the most powerful things that I've done in my 5 years as an amputee. Why do you feel it's important for amputees to advocate for our rights and for us to have access to quality health care?
Brian, I think exactly what you just said. You said it was by far one of the biggest things you've done in your 5 years as an amputee. I'm about to hit my 5 years as an amputee as well, and I've done a very similar thing with advocacy as you have, and I agree with you. I echo your words. I think for that exact reason, people should continue to advocate and encourage other amputees to advocate as well. The biggest thing you can do for yourself is self-care. We all know this. We try and practice it as much as possible, right? And one of those things about self-care is standing up for ourselves and standing up for our rights. And that means being an advocate. And a lot of people asked me, I did some press around this as well, and the press asked me, they said, well, Adrianne, you're not on Medicare or Medicaid. Why are you out here, doing this peaceful protest in Baltimore and in Washington, D.C.? And I said, I looked at them. totally thrown off. And I said, the world rallied around Boston. I don't understand why, just because this doesn't directly affect me in this immediate next day moment, why wouldn't I stand up for other people's rights? Like, why does it have to always affect me for me to care about other people?
Exactly.
And so I feel like it's sort of from their perspective, it's a closed-minded thought process, right? Oh, this doesn't affect me, so I'm just going to ignore it. Well, what people, and I think amputees, and this is the reason we need to encourage them to further go into your question, is, Medicare and Medicaid, they create XYZ policy, whatever it is, and at the time, and so many insurers and insurance companies will echo and copy Medicare and Medicaid, including military,
right?
TRICARE. And I think that that's a big misconception. So for people that think, yes, this doesn't affect me, if it affects other people, we should all care because we're all human and we should take care of each other. B, it will directly affect you because your own insurer will most likely take the lead of Medicare and Medicaid.
Absolutely. And I've tried to explain this to other amputees. And one of the things, I started taking a different approach, because one of the things that people were accusing me of, they're like, oh, well, you're being political and you're supporting this party or that party. And I said, that's not it at all. I said, for me, advocacy is about doing the right thing for the right reasons to help the most people possible. And so you kind of touched on this a little bit, but for those of us who are already doing advocacy, how can we encourage other amputees to get involved and to help them see that it's more than just politics that are at play here?
Yeah, it's difficult to see past that, right? It's difficult to see past, and I understand that is difficult to see past, that it's a political thing. But I agree with what you're saying about helping the most people for the right reasons. And you don't have to state a political view to say, this is a human rights issue. Right. What would you do if you don't have a leg? Or, following the Amputee Coalition of America or any support group, I mentioned them because they're one of the largest, but reading their questions on Twitter and Instagram from amputees themselves saying, I've been wearing this liner or this leg for 11 years because I don't have insurance coverage. That's not right. And you can be on any political party and know that that's not right.
Exactly.
Or maybe they do have insurance coverage, but they're not covering it, correct? So I think we who are advocates can direct people to the simple act of empathy and sympathy, and to have empathy toward others doesn't mean you need to go completely political or go against what you believe politically. It's about empathy, and it's about caring and standing up for what's right.
Absolutely. Last night, I watched your TED Talk again. I've watched it several times before, and it has always resonated with me because you talk about what people say when they don't know what to say. When I was recovering after I became an amputee, the most frequent comment I received from my family and my friends was, sorry I didn't come see you in the hospital. I just didn't know what to say. And of course, plenty of people would offer, hey, you lost your leg, but at least you're still alive. But probably the most awkward thing anyone said to me was, I bet if you pray really hard, God will grow your leg back.
Oh my gracious.
Most of us are taught from an early age. And let me just say, full disclosure, I was very angry about that statement.
Of course you were.
I probably said some things in that moment of anger that were very colorful, maybe. Good way to say that. Yeah. But, many of us are taught from a very early age, and I was one of these. This is how my parents taught me, that these statements come from a place of love. And when I would get angry at these statements, my wife would remind me, she would say, but they mean well. Where do you believe these statements are actually rooted? Is it really from love, or does it come from something else?
Thank you for the support on the TED Talk. And I'm so sorry, that you had those statements said to you. And that was the reason behind the TED Talk, was I faced, the similar stories as you heard. And I believe that they're rooted from a place of fear. And that fear can make us say some really, really terrible things. And it's fear that it's fear of the truth, right? It's fear of the truth that the truth is no matter what, your leg's not going to grow back. I was actually on a trip just this past week. I was in Iceland, and this is not against the lovely TSA agent in a teeny tiny airport in the middle of the Arctic. But they said, when is your leg going to grow back? So my heart melted when I heard you say that. And I think it's rooted in a place of fear. And the fear comes from the fact that it's not going to grow back, that they can't, whoever they is, right? They can't make it better. And we all go to the hospital and want to make it better for our friend friend, brother, sister, mother, lover, who's going through XYZ. We want to be the hero that makes it better, or at least calms the pain. And whether that be physical or emotional or both. And I think it comes from fear. I think they do mean well, but we need to understand and direct the narrative that and I say this in the talk, that if you can't say something nice or you don't know what to say, just don't show up.
Right.
And that's okay. Like someone, and I'll say this quickly, and I know I say it in the talk, but someone brought me a cup of Starbucks every morning before I woke up. And I never ever caught who it was. And still to this day, I don't know who that was. But that meant more to me than anything else. And perhaps it was because I didn't know who it was. But whoever that person was that did it, they didn't know what to say, but they knew that would mean a lot. Yeah. And they didn't need to be present for it.
Right.
Whoever that was. And I think they mean well, but just because you mean well, you may not have you may not echo your words that you want to say correctly. Even I find myself, even after having done the TED Talk, I've been in places where I'm thinking, I have no idea what to say to this person. I can't believe this just happened to my friend.
Absolutely. And, none of us want to receive that phone call or maybe today a text that our family member or our friend is going through, some unimaginable tragedy. But it's a fact of life that if we live long enough, sooner or later, all of us will unfortunately find ourselves in that situation.
Certainly.
What do you believe is the best response when we walk into those situations and we don't have a clue what to say?
I think the best thing to do is, because when I say don't show up, I mean, I don't mean don't show up to your mom's hospital or, family's hospital. Right. Obviously you should go, so take what I say with, in the appropriate context of your life. But when we're faced with that moment, we walk into the room, we don't know what to say. To answer your question, I think it's really important to take the temperature of the room. So for instance, if someone is just, perhaps using colorful language and throwing things, I know I've been there, and throwing things and angry at the world, and, don't stop them. That's where they are in that moment. And you don't necessarily need to join in, but take 10 seconds, 20 seconds before opening your mouth and listen with the intent to hear them instead of listening with the intent to respond or be the hero. And then if they're throwing things, give them something to throw that's soft, maybe a pillow, or hold the pillow while they punch it. And if they are laughing at a television when you think they should be crying, they may not be feeling the physical pain at the moment because of the medication, and laugh with them. Just, I would say, try and match their mood. It's more about them than it is us, even though we are human and we're understandably selfish in our feelings from human nature, but we want to make sure that we are concentrating on their feelings and where they are. So I think matching and taking the temperature of the room is very important. And taking those 10 to 20 seconds at the beginning is very important. Not just walking in and saying what Google told you or what your religion told you, 5 minutes after getting the call or text.
Absolutely. So for anyone who may not know this about you, you're a dancer and might add a very good dancer.
Thank you.
I was a little shocked that at one point in your journey, a doctor told you not to have hope, that dancing again wasn't going to happen. Literally 5 minutes before my amputation. So, I have this infection. I'm in septic shock, multiple organ failure. They stabilize me. I'm life flighted. Surgeon's like, yeah, we got to take your leg or you're going to die. So I'm like, okay, whatever you got to do. So 5 minutes before the amputation, he says, do you have any questions? And more than anything else in the world, I love to swim. The pool is absolutely my natural habitat. And so I said to him, how long before I can swim again? And he didn't necessarily give me the answer that I was looking for or hoping for in that moment. But what he did say to me was, it all depends on how hard you work in therapy. And of course, I had no idea in that moment that my therapy was going to include aquatic therapy. And so it happened much sooner than I would realize. What was it like for you when you became that 1 in a million and you danced on your prosthesis for the first time?
It was magical. As I'm sure it was for you to enter the pool again and just feel the water around you, right?
Yes.
It was magical and it was also heartbreaking. It was both. I felt my limitations, and that was hard. I had muscle memory, but my muscle memory and some of those muscles weren't there. They were phantom. And so I wasn't able to do exactly what I knew I was able to do before. But it was also I was elated.
Sure.
Because I was able to dance. And I knew that if you're starting out terrible, you can only get better. Right. So as I used to always tell my students, so if, the first step is admitting that you can't dance and then you get better. Right. Right. So it was wonderful. And that doctor, I love that your doctor said to you, it depends on how hard you work, because what does that give you? Right. That gives you hope.
Right.
Like, it's up to me on how my life is going to go. It's up to me on fulfilling that dream of swimming again. For me, I had my own doctor tell me when I said, I believe my quality of life will be a 0. And I believe I'm going to have to buy a television and eat Cheetos and sit and watch television for the rest of my life, which as a professional athlete, would never ever think about doing.
Right.
And it's like the opposite of what I would want for my life. And I don't even own a television still. He told me, my surgeon told me, I said, my quality of life will be a 0. And he said, Adrianne, I cannot promise you your life will ever be the same. And this is after my surgery. He said, I can't promise you your life will ever be the same, but I promise you it doesn't have to be bad. And that was similar to what your doctor said, where it was up to me on whether or not my life was going to be good or bad,
right,
regardless of my situation, right? And that's not false hope, which I think is a fine line, and I could go on for ages about that fine line that surgeons and doctors have about false hope, right?
Right.
And I understand that fine line, but there's a difference between leaving it up to the patient and just saying you can't do this, your chances are 1 in a million. You know, two different surgeons, doctors, completely different outcomes. I took the one that I talked to most, the doctor, and I used that to propel me forward. It was up to me to do the work, just like it was up to you to do the aquatic work.
Right. Were there ever any doubts when you went through your journey of recovery that you would dance again, or had you made up your mind that no matter what, this was what you were going to do?
I made up my mind that that's what I was going to do, but 100% I had doubts every day. Not all day, every day, but every day. And I didn't know if I could, because I'd never seen or met an amputee dancer. I later learned there were many. I just didn't know about it.
Right.
And I didn't know I'd never even met an amputee prior. It was very tough. And I doubted myself a lot, but the more I did it, the more I thought, I'm getting better. I can see tiny improvements in balance, improvements in core strength because of PT. And I knew those were all contributing factors to whether or not I was going to be a dancer. I could actually say I'm a dancer. I remember sitting on a plane when I could first start flying again and be mobile enough to be on a plane. Someone said, "What do you do for work?" And it was before my speaking career really took off. And it was before I was performing again and dancing. And I definitely wasn't teaching. And I didn't really have a job. And it was the first time in my life that I didn't have a job. I've been working since I was 14, like child labor in my parents' bookstore. And I can say that because they wouldn't care. And it was the first time that I didn't have a job, but I was dressed in a suit because I was going to a meeting for an amputee group. And I said, it's a long story. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm a nervous flyer. I put my earphones in and I put my sunglasses on and I cried the rest of the flight.
Oh, wow.
Because I couldn't call myself, I felt like I couldn't call myself a dancer, even though I was wearing pants and they would have never known.
Right.
It was the most depressing thing ever. So I'm glad that I was able to be that one in a million.
Absolutely. You recently participated in EverWalk, and seeing your Instagram post with those incredible stats on them was just beyond inspiring. For those of us who aren't familiar, what is EverWalk all about?
You know, I loved it. I loved that you said that. EverWalk is, I still can't quite believe that actually happened. But EverWalk was started by Diana Nyad, who, for those of you who don't know, is the swimmer that swam from Cuba, Havana, Cuba to Florida. And she did it all without touching the boat. It's the longest distance swim. It's one of the great athletic achievements in the world today. And she is, not to get political, she's one of Hillary Clinton's heroes. And she wanted to start a walking group that, and really a movement that is behind the message that sitting is the new smoking. You know, with all this technology that we have, the
Right.
televisions, all of that, it's really sitting is the new smoking. So it wasn't fundraising. It was inspiring people to get up and walk. So we had virtual walkers that would walk from all over, you know, the rest of the US, but our walk was from Boston, downtown Boston. For those of you that know, here in downtown Boston in Copley Square, just a block from the finish line of the Boston Marathon. And we walked all the way up to Cape Elizabeth in Maine, if you map that. And the first day I did 21.5 miles, which was 65,784 steps. And we did about 18 to 20 miles a day for 7 days. And our complete stop was amazingly filled with, you know, some people with some gnarly blisters and tears of joy and accomplishment, and the progress of people who either did 5 miles a day or perhaps 10 miles a day or did the full epic of the 18 to 20s. It didn't matter. Or the virtual, everyone was so proud and had, you know, these moments of turnaround in day 2, day 3, day 4 of, wow, I think I can do this. I couldn't feel my whole body this morning, but now at mile 10 today, I feel like I can do this. I really applaud Diana and her best friend Bonnie for really organizing this. They did one on the West Coast last year. We're doing another one. I'm hooked, definitely, and we're doing another one hopefully on the West Coast, and then hopefully one in Florida to help out. Obviously, her heart is there along with so many others with the hurricanes that are happening, and that's where she accomplished her big goal. And this is just a really big movement to get the nation up and moving and healthy. You'd be surprised at how much walking can kick you into shape.
Absolutely.
It was harder than the Boston Marathon.
Wow. That's incredible.
No joke.
I've only ever personally known and talked to one other person who's ever competed in the Boston Marathon, another amputee. You went back and you competed in the Boston Marathon. Mm-hmm. What was that experience like for you?
It was so emotional. I did it out of emotion. I was not a runner before. I was a ballroom dancer. I had zero interest in anything that didn't have to do with fake lashes or a spray tan or ostrich feathers.
Sure.
And once everything happened after the terrorist attack and I lost my leg, Boston rallied, and I wanted to thank Boston and beyond. And since Boston brings in so many people from around the globe, and it's in our city. It's the heart of our city. So many people showed up that next year and cheered everybody on, and I was motivated to run. And in 2016, I said, I'm running this year. And I started training in 2015 and really got into running. Somehow, some morning, I woke up and said, I think I'll go for another run. And I shocked myself. That day running in the Boston Marathon, I'll never forget, one of my best friends who's on my team looked at me and he said, Adrianne, you're okay. I was on the verge of a complete panic attack because the world was watching and I was very scared.
Right.
And I'd hurt myself, or I'd got myself in over my head, or, all of the self-doubt that comes with it. It was about 4 a.m. I don't do too well at that hour anyway. And he said, Adrianne, what will get you to that finish line is nothing compared to what got you to the start. And I said, you're right. And I got on the bus with the team and we got to Hopkinton where it starts, where you all the way out there and you think, I have to run home. And you go for, forever, and got off the bus. I crossed the start line. And I said, I did it. I crossed the start line of the Boston Marathon. Whatever happens next, happens next. And I was so proud of myself. And I'm a big fan of self-celebration. There's a difference between that and an ego. Right. And especially after you've gone through what, you and I each have gone through, and so many others, you don't have to lose a limb to know that self-celebration should not stop after you get your last money from the tooth fairy. And I believe that, so many people rally around everyone in Boston and doing the marathon. And it was the most emotional, hard things, one of the most emotionally hard things and physically challenging things that I've ever had the pleasure of doing. Yet I was so proud. And after I finished, I remember being in the living room, taking my leg off, my running blade, and my friends carrying me to the after party, because of course I wasn't going to miss that leg or not. And I couldn't get my leg back on. And all of a sudden my phone started going crazy, and President Obama had tweeted me and said, Adrianne, congratulations on your Boston Marathon. That's how we beat terrorism. We carry on, we finish the race. And I just started bawling, and I thought, you know what? That's what we do. It doesn't matter how long it takes us. My parents are proud to say it's easy to find me in the record book because I came in last. I'm proud of being last. I'm a recovering perfectionist. So I celebrated that night, and it took me almost a week to tweet President Obama back because I had no idea what to say.
Wow.
And now I feel like I was disrespecting him, but I was so elated I didn't know what to say.
What are some of the things that keep you motivated and keep you on track and keep you going?
I think it's really important to keep self-aware of what you need to keep motivated. I think is equal to motivating, to taking action on those things. To be self-aware of what you need to get through, because the stages of recovery, and I don't believe that you're ever fully recovered. I believe there's just a new normal. And that, as we've talked about, that new normal doesn't have to be bad, but if you're looking for a light switch to go on and say, all better, it's not going to happen, which means that you're still going to have those bad days where you throw things and you use colorful language and you throw your leg across the room, and my Fred Astaire has to go get it for me. And I think it's important to stay motivated and to know what you need. For me, to stay motivated, it's projects that are not distracting. And that was a lesson I had to learn about 1.5 years in. I was taking on a lot of projects, but it was distracting me from the reality that was actually, I had lost my limb. Even though I was doing things that talked about it, I wasn't actively present 100% of the time into that feeling. And so to stay busy with projects that benefit amputees really helps motivate me. And also what motivates me is, just hearing about stories about how, and this sounds silly, but hearing about stories about how people get through the dirt, how people get through the mud, not just the amputee that's standing on top of the mountain, but how did they get there? What did they have to face to get there? I had a really great conversation with a couple people in Las Vegas at AOPA, and we were talking about the the grit and the grind that we have to go through, sometimes on a daily basis or sometimes on a monthly basis, depending. And those stories motivate me because it makes you feel less alone. And I feel like feeling less alone, even though we all know there are so many amputees in this world, I think feeling less alone is important, and not just with your own core group of people. Your own core group of people can understand you as best they can, your closest family members, perhaps spouse, whoever, but other amputees understand you in a totally different way. And there is something really powerful about that. So for me, it's being motivated is about staying in touch with amputees and hearing about how they get through it, so you can take bits and pieces for your own puzzle that you're putting together of your new normal and navigate it the best way you can. Sure.
What are some of the lessons that you have learned about yourself since this tragedy and since becoming an amputee?
Wow. I say wow because I've learned so many that I just needed so desperately to learn. I learned that imperfection is beautiful and that you don't need to be perfect to inspire others. You should let other people be inspired by how you handle your imperfections. I got that quote off Pinterest, so I can't take credit for it. I think it's important to not try and be perfect. That comes a lot from the ballroom world that I come from my whole life. But I think another life lesson is when someone tells you something can't be done, it's more of a reflection of their limitations and not yours. So when I'm taking on a new project, or I am learning how to dance again, back in the day, or I am trying to ice climb a mountain in Cayambe in Ecuador, or dive or do things for the first time, I have to remember, if someone says you can't do it, or your chances are 1 in a million, like we spoke about, it's just because they haven't seen it before.
Okay.
It's not because it can't be done. And that is very important to remember. And that's a huge life lesson that I had to learn again, because I was starting to, in the dark days at the beginning and after, I was believing that I could do some of the things that I wanted to do. But luckily I'm stubborn, so I would try anyway. I think another life lesson, I'll just say one more. I think another life lesson is to always be learning. I'm much more empathetic now, just for people crossing the road who you think, oh, you're waiting, to go and it's a green light. And you think, oh, this person's taking forever. You have no idea what's going on with them.
Exactly.
Physically, no idea. And I think that the empathy part is, I felt like I had empathy before, but looking back, it's completely different.
You're absolutely right. And when someone asked me that question, and so I asked that question to everyone I talked to, because when someone asked me that question, my answer was similar to yours. And that, I said, one of the things I've learned, and maybe one of the reasons this happened, was because I needed to learn empathy. I mean, like you, I always thought I had empathy, but it wasn't until I became an amputee that I really, maybe I should say, practiced it.
Yeah.
And you're right. You have no idea when someone you think, oh, I wish this person would hurry up, but you don't know their life or their story or what's going on and why they're slow. And so for me, that was the same lesson that I had to learn, and I'm glad I did. I really am.
Me too. I'm glad I did too. And it's hard not to call other people out when people say certain things. I remember I say the crosswalk part because I was crossing a crosswalk and I was finally able to get, as soon as the countdown, it was like on 14, it starts at 14, just a random number. And I'm like, I can make 14, they start to speed up and learn how to walk again.
Right.
And you're like, I can make 14. And you're like all happy in your head and you're going as fast as you can, like a turtle, like a snail. But in your mind, you're so fast. Right.
Right.
And the guy leans out his window and he's like, listen, lady. First of all, like, I'm too young to be called lady. And second, he's like, is that the fastest you can walk? And I lifted up my pant leg and I said, welcome to Boston. And I said, welcome to Boylston Street. And then I just started like going as slow as possible. And there may have been other words used. It was early on, but he just was completely quiet. And So yeah, the empathy part it's hard to not call people out when other people aren't empathetic, but you learn as time goes on. I'm glad I learned that lesson as well. I echo your words.
Absolutely. What's some advice or encouragement that you would give to an amputee who's struggling maybe to figure out how to take their life back and to return to doing the things they once loved to do?
Gosh, I would say don't rush it. There's a great greeting card that says, get better soon. And then you open it up and it says, gosh, that sounds bossy. Get ready on your own time, or get better on your own time. And I love that and I bought out those cards at the store and I haven't found them since, but I love that. And, I think that's my advice is that, get better at your own time. If someone says, oh, I saw on Instagram or online or in a movie or XYZ that so-and-so amputee got got better. I'm doing air quotes. I know you can't see them, but better at 2 months. Let's pretend 2 months.
Right.
And you think you don't know what's going on underneath. They may have leg sores. They may have had a different surgery where they pulled the muscle up or didn't pull the muscle up. That takes more recovery time. It can also create more problems or less problems as the person grows. So I say get better on your own time and be vocal about what you need from your circle. So if you have a day that you don't want to be asked how you're doing, or you have a day where you don't want to talk about your leg or arm or whatever you're dealing with, tell people and be emotionally honest with yourself, which is very hard. It's a huge lesson, but try. It's a good thing to practice. Start to practice. One thing a day, write it down, or one thing a week even. Start where you can and be emotionally honest with other people. If you make plans for someone to come over and it ends up being one of those really bad days, call them and say, you can still come over, but I'm having a really bad day and you just need to know that. You're not going to make it better. Be honest and be vocal and take your time. Don't rush it. Don't base your beginning off of somebody else's middle.
Absolutely. So today I've been talking with Adrianne Haslet, and for more information about Adrianne, visit www.adriannehaslet.com and follow her adventures on Instagram at Adrianne Haslet. Adrianne, thank you so much for joining me on revAMPd. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Brian, I could talk to you all day. It's been a pleasure for me. Thank you so much. I could talk to you for hours, so maybe we can chat again. But thank you so much for having me.
You've been listening to revAMPd, the #1 amputee podcast hosted by an amputee and brought to you by Delatory Orthotics and Prosthetics in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. If you've enjoyed today's episode, leave us a review on iTunes or give us a like on Facebook. I'm Brian Mosier. I invite you to visit our website, www.revampedpodcast.com, and connect with us on Facebook at revAMPd Podcast.